This is not the title that is on your program, so I'm sorry. But most of my research now is engaged in the Buber-Rosenzweig Bible translation, and in particular studies the so-called Arbeitspapiere, which is a gold mine of thousands of pages of drafts and notes and comments written between Martin Buber and Franz Rosenzweig during their collaboration on the translation between 1925 and 1929. And as the conference got closer, I thought I'd look at the many meanings of home in the Buber-Rosenzweig Bible translation and in these working papers. Now, Buber and Rosenzweig assigned great weight to the original meaning of biblical terms, and they did their utmost to give them expression in German, even to the point of trying to expand the German language through biblical language. And the perhaps most well-known tool at their disposal towards this end were the Leitworte, that is, keywords, roots, sounds that repeat themselves throughout a given biblical narrative or between biblical narratives, whose resonances in Hebrew, especially through the Hebrew roots, Buber and Rosenzweig sought to replicate in German, and thereby to allow German language readers to hear the full harmony of meaning and sound that the original Hebrew produced. But now, what do we do with the curious case of home, of Heim, in the context of the Buber-Rosenzweig translation? There is no word in Hebrew specifically meaning home that doesn't also mean house. And yet, for all their insistence on conveying the exclusively original Hebrew expression in German, the Buber-Rosenzweig translation is filled with Heime. There are the more obvious cases of nouns like Heimat and adjectives like heimlich, but predominantly and most interestingly, Heim appears in the translation as a prefix added to verbs, and especially verbs of movement or action. And here's the puzzle. Buber and Rosenzweig insert the term Heim time and again, where there's no original biblical term that they are explicitly translating. This is the case not only in what is perhaps a less surprising case of the verb lashuv or lehashiv, that is to return. So for example, when Jacob expresses the hope, Vishafti b'shalom el beit avi, that I will return in peace to my father's house, they translate it, und bin ich heil dann heimgekehrt zum Haus meines Vaters. Or likewise, here Jacob is a little older, and he promises, V'haya Elohim imachem, v'heshiv etchem el eretz avotechem, führt euch heim ins Land eurer Väter. But we also see this in a slew of other verbs of movement and action besides lashuv or lehashiv. Here are just a few additional examples. So when Moses gets tired of listening to the advice of his father-in-law and he lets him go home, we read Vayelech lo Yitro, this is talking about Yitro, Vayelech lo el arzo, which they translate as und ging heim in sein Land. Perhaps my favorite example, in Deuteronomy 31, when Moses is breaking the news that he's no longer going to lead the Israelites, he says, Ben 120 shana anochi hayom lo uchal od latzet velavo. I'm 120 years old, I can no longer go out and come back in. That is, I can't take upon myself the responsibilities of leadership. And Buber and Rosenzweig translate this as Ich kann nicht mehr ausfahren und heimziehen. We're just getting warmed up. Perhaps you wondered how Buber and Rosenzweig translated the phrase V'ne'esafta el amecha gamata, you'll be gathered to your peoples, that is after your death. They decide to go with Dan wirst zu deinen Volkleuten eingeheimst, auch du. That is, you will be gathered together, brought home into one with your people. And so then you'll no longer be surprised that the holiday of Sukkot, Chag HaAsif, is Festrein des Heimsens, that is the gathering of things together towards the home. A last pair of examples, the Yovel, the Jubilee, is of course none other than the Heimholer. And when we are commanded not to take vengeance on our neighbors, lo tikom, they translate this as Heimzahle nicht. So we find Heim all over the place in the translation. On the other hand, not every case of coming and going, of sending and gathering, of avenging or returning, is a case of coming and going home or returning home in the translation. And so we are faced with a set of difficult questions. First of all, what is Heim exactly a translation of in the Buber-Rosenzweig Bible? And secondly, how should we understand the resonances that are now created between Heim words in the translation? For ostensibly contrary to their intention of giving exclusive expression to the original meanings of the biblical Leitworte, their use of Heim links together terms, movements, phrases, and scenes in the Bible, which are not noticeably linked together in the original. And so what do Buber and Rosenzweig then think that the Bible wishes to teach its readers through these new additional resonances? So my plan, for which I have insufficient time to carry out, is now to give a kind of general survey of the many meanings of Heim in the translation and make a rather loose claim about what they share in common. And then we will look at a few examples from the Arbeitspapiere where we see Buber and Rosenzweig making the decision to go with Heim or to go against Heim. And this should teach us something about what they mean by the use of the term. Okay, I had water here somewhere. I do have water. One second. Okay, so we can begin with a kind of general impression, which is that Heim indicates that a verb of movement or of action leads its subject or its object to occupy or to reoccupy its proper place. And we've already seen this in a few of the examples that I gave before. I'm not going to go through all of these, but when Yitro goes back to his land, Vayelech lo el arzo, he's not just going to his land, but he's going to the land which represents the place that he is supposed to be. That is his proper place. But we also see scores and scores of examples where what it means to be brought back to one's proper place is intended figuratively. And I want to spend a little time on some of these examples. When Joseph's brothers want to kill him, Reuven, the oldest brother, suggests that they throw him into a pit instead, of course, and the narrator explains his actions as follows: Lema'an hatziloto miyadam lahashivo el aviv, which Buber and Rosenzweig translate damit in aus ihrer Hand rette, in seinem Vater heimzubringen. And here I would suggest returning him to his father isn't just returning him to a place, but it's returning him to safety, it's returning him to where he was his father's favorite child, to enable him to resume who he was. In a similar vein, when Elijah prays to God to bring a child back to life, we read, Vatashov nefesh hayeled al kirbo vayechi, which they translated as, Die Seele des Kindes kehrte an sein Eingeweid heim, lebte auf. That is to say, the child returns to his body, which is the proper place where he can live. This one, I'm skipping this one. So we get time in quite a number of cases of vengeance that are brought, both divine and human. So in this case, Vayashev Elohim et ra'at Avimelech asher asa le'aviv, so ließ Gott heimkehren die Bosheit Avimelechs. That is to say, God returns to Avimelech the evil that he has done so that the score is settled. He's kind of now back to where he deserves to be. And lastly here, Vayar David ki yatsa Shaul levakesh et nafsho. David sees that Shaul wieder ausgefahren war, seine Seele heimzusuchen. That is, Saul is not just looking for David, but he's looking to get at his very essence, where he is most at home, I would say. So insofar as Heim indicates a movement towards one's proper place, or an act that puts you in your proper place, or threatens you when you are in your most proper place, I want to suggest that Heim, when it's attached as a prefix to verbs of movement or action, implies the completion of the movement or action in its fullest possible sense. It's a return from movement to stasis or equilibrium. And that can be as the complete fulfillment of the action or movement or the complete cancellation of the movement. And when I say in the fullest possible sense, I mean relative to other possible degrees of the same movement or action that could be expressed with the same verb, and which Buber and Rosenzweig would express with different prefixes. And so what I want to do now, with whatever time is left me, is to now bring a couple examples from the Arbeitspapiere that help us see how Buber and Rosenzweig make this decision. So our first case is in Numbers 27. Moses has been informed that he is out of a job, and he responds by telling God that God's going to have to find a leader then for the people. And Buber is, as we're going to see in his first draft, is his big challenge in these verses, which you have in front of you, is to figure out how to get exactly right the bounce between latzet velavo and lehotzi and lehavi. So they should find. God should find an ish who will be al ha'edah. אשר יצא לפניהם, ואשר יבוא לפניהם, ואשר יוציאם, ואשר יביאם, ולא תהיה עדת השם כצאן אשר אין להם רועה. And so this is what Buber's first draft looks like in the handwritten material. So just a couple quick notes. So the bigger text is the translation itself in Buber's not surprisingly very fine handwriting. And when we have extra comments or we have corrections that are made in that blue ink, we know that Buber is correcting himself. But when we see corrections in red, that's an indication that his correction is based on Rosenzweig's comment or correction to him. So when we see red here, we know there's been some action between the two of them. And we also have to work to kind of not see the red in order to figure out what Buber's initial translation was. And so here we see that Buber is trying to play, first of all, with Yetzeh and Yavo as opposites, but also he's trying to recreate the sound that you hear when you go from Yetzeh to Yotzi, for example, or Lavo to Lehavi. And his first trial here is for Asher Yetzeh Lifnehem v'Asher Yavo Lifnehem, and so on, is der Auszieher vor ihnen, der Eingeher vor ihnen, der sie ausführe and der sie einführe. But we know from Buber's comment in the right margin, which is intended for Rosenzweig to consider, that he's not entirely happy with this translation. And he tells us why. He says, weit besser wäre ja ausfahre, So better than ausziehe would be ausfahre, and that's because he wants to replicate the ausfahre and ausführe with yetze and yotzi. But he's got a problem. Aber was dann für yavo and yiviem? But how do I now replicate the opposition between latzet velavo, which works nicer, I guess, with ausziehen and eingehen? Lucky for Buber, Rosenzweig has an answer for him. And Rosenzweig responds, Heimwende. So Rosenzweig's suggestion is you can represent asher yetze lifnehem v'asher yavo lifnehem. The coming should be a coming all the way back home. That would be a way of expressing this passage. So Heim here would mean this would be the completion of the action of the leader as after he's taken the people out and then brings them back in. From the red correction, we know that Buber likes the answer. So I don't know if you can make it out from where you are, but here we see Heimwende and Heimwende. He corrects and goes with Heim. But this doesn't last long for Buber. He doesn't, in the end, really like the suggestion, and so we have another comment in the papers, and this comment helps us now kind of understand what is at stake for them when they use the prefix Heim. So Buber now says, I don't like this. Heim is zu pregnant. So Heim, I take it to mean, has too full a meaning. It's too strong for the case at hand. Gemeint is höchstens Glück. Okay, what the text means here is just, kind of going out and coming back. Not all the way back. Eigentlich doch nur hin und her, also wohl Rückwende. So Buber decides we're not going to go with Heimwende, and in fact, in the published text, that is exactly what they go with. They go with Rückwende and not Heimwende. Okay, so why did I put you through all this? So I'm not. I must confess that I'm not 100% sure that I understand the distinction that Buber wants to make here as far as the verses in the Bible go. But it is clear that Buber wants to make a distinction. And this distinction helps us understand that Buber and Rosenzweig view Heim as a more extreme, a more complete, a more pregnant form of the action of coming or bringing here. Aya, how much time do I have?
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm going ahead, but you don't know how far I'm going ahead. I might go all the way home. Let me jump. I'm going to skip here. I'm going to jump and bring just a couple more. No, we can't. Just a couple more examples that help us, that I think confirm this idea that we are playing with. So here we are in Numbers 22. Bilam finally realizes that the donkey he has been riding has stopped because there's an angel of God blocking his way. And Bilam says to the angel, I don't want to mess with you. I don't need to go do Balak's bidding. And he says, Ve'ata imra be'enecha ashuva li. Okay, so if this is a bad idea, if you say this is a bad idea, I will return. And so we see interestingly here that Buber initially can't decide. So he says, Ist es übel in deinen Augen, so kehr ich. And now he gives two possibilities. So I'll just turn around, or Heim. Okay, and he leaves it for Rosenzweig to decide. And Rosenzweig says Nebentext, which always means not the Haupttext, not the main line, but the other option. That is, he says to go with Heim. So I think that what they are going with here is saying, Bilam is not just saying I'm going to turn around, but I'm going to forget the whole thing. I'm not going to go do this at all. I'm going to go back to where I started. That is my proper place. Two more examples, Aya. So we are now in Judges, the third chapter of Judges, where Ehud has this complicated plan to take down the king of Moab, which first involves having people bring a gift to the king and then having them leave so that he's alone with the king. So the sending of these people away, Vaishalach et ha'am nosei mincha, after they bring this gift, we see here that Buber initially goes with Da sandte das Volk weg, which he crosses out, and again, in this case, goes with Haim. That is to say, the people are not just told scram, but they're relieved of their duties. They're completely done with their task, and they can go back to their proper place. And a last example, after Avshalom, who is tried to carry out this coup against his father David, after he is killed, and David is looking to reassert his rule, we see 3 times in 3 successive verses, Lashiv et hamelech, and David and his people are saying, aren't you guys going to return the king? And here we again find, we're not going to look at all of this, don't worry. Let's just look right here, this third line here. So for the line Ve'ata lama atem machrishim lashiv et hamelech, we first have Buber's suggestion. Und jetzt warum schweigt ihr davon, den König zurückzuholen? And then above he has kehren zu lassen. These are the 2 suggestions he plays with. But over here he again writes a note to Rosenzweig and says, mit kehren ist es schwach. So again, we have this case where he wants a stronger formulation, and yet again, Rosenzweig provides and says, warum haltet ihr euch still, statt den König Heimkehr zu schaffen oder zu bereiten? And that's more or less what they go with in their published edition. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up, yes. So what have we learned? So first of all, Heim in the Buber-Rosenzweig translation means being in one's ownmost place, in one's proper place, so that Heim added as a prefix to verbs of action and movement indicate that they have completed themselves in their most full form, bringing the subject or the object of that movement back to equilibrium, to stasis. And I think that we can surmise that Buber and Rosenzweig apparently viewed this biblical picture of life as a kind of constant movement of going out and returning to one's home and one's proper place as resonating from the Bible no less than the Leitworte in the original biblical terms. And with that, I will just say that I hope that the Leo Baeck Institute continues to serve as a Heim, as an ultimate point of centering and equilibrium for the study of German Jewish culture and its legacy for many years to come. Thank you.